Hey, what up, family? It's yours truly, the Don here. We back at it once again to bring up a little bit of light and knowledge into the world. At least give a little bit of spill and see if we can figure out some of the clues as to what God's purpose is in our life, what He commands us to do, what are the instructions, and let's see if we can finish through His birthday sequence and figure out if God was giving us any instructions in that. But actually, I just wanted to figure out and finish breaking down uh, the true birthday to Jesus Christ, if you will. So I hope y'all been keeping up with me and joining me along on this adventure and this journey. If not, y'all can just scroll down the timeline, go through the videos. It's almost imperative that you get the full sense of everything going on here. If not, just go ahead and join me today and we'll go ahead and pick up where we left off and finish breaking down these clues to the true birthday to Jesus Christ. So when we go to the Bible, we know that in the Bible, we've been breaking down 2:10 as Jesus Christ's birthday. Now, when we speak of God in that aspect, we know that 2:10 and Passover did not land on those particular dates when they were supposed to back in the period in time of Jesus Christ. But how could God reach out into the future tense to break down those things to us, to help us revelate and understand those things and understand the meaning of what and the importance of Jesus Christ's birthday is? So we're going to go to the Bible. We're going to break down these combination sequences with the calendars and the mixing up of dates and times to see if we can pinpoint out with the combination lock land on Jesus Christ's birthday. It's February 10th, which is coming up pretty soon. And we just want to end that, say happy birthday to Christ. So we just want to send a happy birthday out to the Lord up above, to the Most High, and just be grateful for the grace that He has had on our lives and the wisdom and knowledge that He gives freely to those who seek it out in His name. And so when we're thinking about Jesus Christ's birthday not being exactly lined up where it's supposed to be, remember the leap years involved when we're talking about a Hebrew calendar with the 7 years of leap years in the 19-year sequence, right? And that being called the pregnant year or the pregnant month, if you will. We broke down Passover, sequencing out Jesus' birthday. We broke down Adar, and we've also broke down Tu B'Shavat. But where can we find in the Bible some clue as to why Satan or the devil or the spirit of those nature of things would want to have Jesus Christ's birthday on December 25th instead of it being where it's supposed to land at, in the sense where it's supposed to be? And then we got to think, if Jesus Christ's birthday is actually when it is concerning Passover, that means He would have been born around Passover. That means He also would have been crucified near the same time, which means Christmas and Easter should actually be around the same time of the year. But continuing on from there, we're going to go to Jeremiah chapter 33. Then we're going to break down chapter 33 and see if we can find some clues between God and the devil and see if there's a reason for these mixing up of things, right? So it says in Jeremiah chapter 33:17, "For this is what the Lord says, David will never fail to have a man to sit on the throne of Israel, nor will the Levitical priests ever fail to have a man to stand before me continually to offer burnt offerings, to burn grain offerings, and to present sacrifices." The word of the Lord came to Jeremiah. This is what the Lord says: "If you can break my covenant with the day and my covenant with the night, so that day and night no longer come at their appointed time, then my covenant with David, my servant, and my covenant with the Levites, who are the priests ministering before me, can be broken, and David will no longer have a descendant to reign on his throne. I will make the descendants of David, my servant, and the Levites who minister before me as countless as the stars in the sky, as measureless as the sand on the seashore." So right there you can see He's saying unless you can change day from night and night from day and take them out of their original appointed times, then there will never fail to be a king on David's throne. So this whole mixing up of the truth and the time periods and the time frames of the truth being expressed, whether in Jesus Christ's birthday or whether the feast days being celebrated when they're supposed to be, all of those things pertain to someone sitting on David's throne, right? So we have things like daylight savings time. The next day is considered at midnight, And when you have to consider the Hebrews' days and calendars, their day starts at sunset, right? Not at midnight. So those are different things that have been kind of scrambled around, and who knows the manipulation of those type of things, right? But continuing on from there, so we got Jeremiah 33 saying, unless you can change these things, my covenant would never change, right? So we're talking about David's throne. But continuing on from there, that's just a little clue to give you an idea of why Satan would want to deceive or anything like that. It says the lawless one would change times and laws, right? He would change times and laws, right? But continuing on. So where are some more clues in the Bible? Because I pretty much gave you almost every clue I could give you. But there's always more. So we have to look in the aspect that God can see throughout all aspects of time. No matter what calendar you're going by, no matter what time period you're living in, he can still understand how to get the message across in a future tense prospect, right? So if we go to Luke chapter 2, right? Luke chapter 2 is where I want to go next, because I feel like in Luke chapter 2, it'll give us a bit of a clue as to what we're looking for when breaking down Jesus Christ's birthday. So let's say God was reaching into this time period because he's expressing to us February 10th, 210 being the birthday of Jesus Christ's birth. So we have to look in that perspective and living in this time, because most people who are God's children or God's so-called chosen people, they haven't studied certain things when it comes to Hebrew Israelite calendars, different things like that. They probably just been praising and worshiping, singing and dancing, and just giving glory to God, which he does deserve also. But have we been putting in the work and the studying factors to gain the wisdom and understanding of the times we're living in and how God is communicating those things to us, right? So it was Luke chapter 1. Now we want to go to Luke chapter 1, but we want to perceive these things from our time period right now, as in Gregorian calendar wise, right? Because we can understand the Hebrew calendar, but we're going to break these things down, and I'm also going to back it up with some dates and times pertaining to this time period. So if you go to Luke chapter 1, verse 26, it says, now in the 6th month, the angel Gabriel was sent by God to a city of Galilee named Nazareth, to a virgin betrothed to a man whose name was Joseph, of the house of David. The virgin's name was Mary. And having come in, the angel said to her, rejoice, highly favored one, the Lord is with you, and blessed are you among women. So you can see, Gabriel came to her in the 6th month, right? Now, if you count 6 months from the Gregorian calendar, that's June. If you count 9 months from the 6th month, right? You got June, July, August, September, October, November, December, January, February. You get 9 months leading you up from June, giving you February, right? Now, when you look at entertainment and sports and things like that, usually you have the Super Bowl in the month of Aquarius, right? The end of January and the beginning of February. And then you have the NBA Finals. Always usually lands within the month of June, right? Because all of those things are certain kinds of practices and rituals that we are not pretty much aware of, which I'm going to do a video on that tomorrow concerning the Super Bowl and show y'all how God is speaking through all of these things in some way, shape, form, or fashion. So y'all stay tuned for that too. So we landed Jesus Christ's birthday down to the month of Tu B'Shavat, right? So Tu B'Shavat is going to actually give us some clues. Now, Tu B'Shavat coincides with the flowering of the almond tree. So around January, February, the almond tree is blossoming and giving bloom to its fruit, right? Which is very significant when we think about that. Where in the Bible can we get some clues that the significance of an almond tree? We know that Tu B'Shavat is the birthday of the trees, right? Or the new year of the trees. So we know Tu B'Shavat is actually celebrating one of the New Years, because there's 4 New Years on the Hebrew calendar, right? Because it's so mixed up and messed up. But continuing on from that though, right? So what is the importance of the almond bloom being associated with Tu B'Shavat? I think it's kind of significant to Christ's power and Christ's authority in this world. When we go back to the book of Numbers, during the time of the Exodus of Moses and Aaron, his brother, we know that when they were going to select the high priest of the tabernacle, the person who was in control of the Holy of Holies, right? The person who would be over those things, he would be the priest, and he would be the one that enact ceremonies and officiate sacrifices and things like that. Moses had 12 of the leaders from each tribe of Israel, the 12 tribes, right, take a staff and put it in the Holy of Holies, and whoever staff will give a sign will be the one who will become high priest. Well, we know the next day after doing such a thing, Aaron's staff, which is Moses' brother, his staff ended up blooming almond blossoms, right? So there you go in the book of Numbers, producing an almond blossom from the staff of Aaron, which is a powerful symbol and a powerful tool that was used for the deliverance of God's people. Now, if we go to the book of Jeremiah, we can get an even more further suspect of what this almond branch represents, right? Or the importance of the almond tree, right? So Jeremiah chapter 1, and we talking about Jesus Christ's birth and his birthday, right? So I think Jeremiah chapter 1 speaks a little bit even further into those things, because check it out right here. This is Jeremiah chapter 1. We're going to start at verse 4. The word of the Lord came to me saying, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations. Alas, sovereign Lord, I said, I do not know how to speak. I am too young. But the Lord said to me, do not say, I am too young. You must go to everyone I send you to, and say whatever I command you. Do not be afraid of them, for I am with you, and will rescue you, declares the Lord. Then the Lord reached out his hand and touched my mouth and said to me, I have put my words in your mouth. See, today I appoint you over nations and kingdoms, to uproot and to tear down, to destroy and overthrow, to build and to plant. The word of the Lord came to me. What do you see, Jeremiah? I see the branch of an almond tree, I replied. The Lord said to me, you have seen correctly, for I am watching to see my word is fulfilled. Because when you actually look up the almond tree in Hebrew, it has something to do with the word shaked, right? And the word shaked is also associated with the word shakud, meaning to watch, right? So God is watching to see that his word is fulfilled, and he's using the almond branch as an example of his fulfillment of things, or his watching to fulfill the things that he is about to do in the world, right? The word of the Lord came to me again. What do you see? He says, I see a pot that is boiling, I answered. It is tilting toward us from the north. See, the north is representing from Gog and Magog, if you will, out of the book of Ezekiel chapter 38, the war of Gog and Magog, which is a biblical war that will bring about God's judgments and wrath, but it's for a purpose and a cause. If you go to Jeremiah chapter 29, it breaks it down even further that the Lord will bring forth pestilence, war, and famine and things like that, and a king on David's throne in order to enact his bringing about of our freedom, right after 70 years of captivity in Babylon, if you will. But continuing on from there, right? It says, I see a pot that is boiling, and I answered, and it is tilting toward us from the north. And the Lord said to me, from the north disaster will be poured out on all who live in the land. I am about to summon all the peoples of the northern kingdoms, declares the Lord. Their kings will come and set up their thrones in the entrance of the gates of Jerusalem. They will come against all her surrounding walls and against the towns of Judah. I will pronounce my judgments on my people because of their wickedness in forsaking me, and burning incense to other gods, and in worshiping what their hands have made. Get yourself ready. Stand up and say to them whatever I command you. Do not be terrified by them, or I will terrify you before them. Today I have made you a fortified city, an iron pillar, and a bronze wall to stand against those of the whole land, and against the kings of Judah, its officials, its priests, and the people of the land. They will fight against you, but you will not be overcome. for I am with you, and I will rescue you, declares the Lord. So that right there is coming from the book of Jeremiah chapter 1. And as you can see, as the Lord was giving him a vision of an almond branch, he was speaking, I knew you before you were formed in the womb. Before you were even made flesh and blood, you were already set apart for your mission and your purpose on the Lord's behalf. That's pretty deep. Now, where else can we find some revelation of this almond branch representing the month of Tu B'Shvat, representing the birth and the birth date of the Lord Jesus Christ? We're going to go ahead and break that down even further, you feel me? So when you look in the Bible and we're talking about all the things that were made for the temple and for ceremonial purposes and things of that nature, you can look at the lampstand, right? The menorah, they called it. It had 7 lamp stands on it. The menorah is fashioned out of an almond tree, right? And we know that the Lord, in the book of Revelations, he is standing with 7 stars in his hand, and he's standing amongst the 7 lampstands, right? We know the 7 stars in his hand represent 7 angels, and those 7 angels are over the 7 churches. And he even says that those 7 lampstands represents the 7 churches of the book of Revelation, right? So we can see the importance of those lampstands, and we can see that the lampstand in itself represents a almond blossom, right? An almond tree, if you will. And you can just look those things up to get a little bit more in-depth detail about it. But that's just another clue. Now, if we go to the book of Judges, we can begin to see that trees have something to do with the king. We already know that Jesus Christ is the root, right, of Jesse. We know he is the true vine, right? We know he is the sprout, if you will. He is the true vine. He is the beginning of the refreshing of that tree, because the tree was chopped down, actually. But continuing on from there, if we go to the book of Judges, we can get a little ensemblage that trees have something to do with people, and trees also have something to do with kings. So let's go ahead and check that out in Judges chapter 9, right? And we know Judges was pretty much before Israel had kings over them. They had people like Gideon. They had people like Samson representing somebody to come defend God's people on his behalf, right? God would choose those people to defend the people, right? So Gideon and Samson are people that are represented in the book of Judges. But in this particular part of Judges, we're going to go to chapter 9, and we're going to break down what these trees are representing in Judges chapter. Now, before we get to the parable of the trees, we want to break down Abimelech, because Abimelech is the one who wanted to become king here. But in order for him to become king, he ended up killing all of his brothers, which was 70 in total, so that he could rule over the people as one man, instead of, breaking down the leadership into the 70 groups. We know that when Moses gave a portion of his spirit to God, he had to share it with 70 of the elders, right? And they became a part of his portion in managing and ruling over the people, right? We know that even when we talk about the harlot in the book of Revelations, right, that the number 70 is prevalent over and over again. Even when Jesus had his disciples with him, he gave a portion of his ability to 70, right? And they went out with the authority and the power to trample over serpents and scorpions and so on and so forth, right? They could call out things in the name of the Lord, and they would actually have power and authority in doing so, because Jesus Christ ordained it to be so. And it happened just that same way in the time of Moses. So that number 70 is important to biblical aspects of things. Speaking of 70 years and the captivity of Babylon, even, right? But continuing on from there, we're going to go ahead and read into Judges chapter 9, because see, even though he killed 70 of his brothers, one of them actually escaped. So we're going to end up breaking down that one brother who escaped, and breaking down his name and what it means and how it refers to Jesus Christ in any way. So boom, it says, when Jotham was told about this, he climbed up on the mountain of Gerizim and shouted to them, listen to me, citizens of Shechem, so that God may listen to you. Verse 8, one day the trees went out to anoint a king for themselves, and they said to the olive tree, be our king. But the olive tree answered, should I give my oil, by which both gods and humans are honored, to hold sway over the trees? Next, the tree said to the fig tree, come and be our king. But the fig tree even replied, should I give up my fruit, so good and sweet, to hold sway over the trees? Then the tree said to the vine, come and be our king. But the vine answered, should I give up my wine, which cheers both gods and humans, to hold sway over the trees? And finally, all the trees said to the thorn bush, come and be our king. The thorn bush said to the trees, if you really want to anoint me king over you, come and take refuge in my shade. But if not, then let fire come out of the thorn bush and consume the cedars of Lebanon. Have you acted honorably and in good faith by making Abimelech king? Have you been fair to Jerubbaal and his family? Have you treated him as he deserves? Remember that my father fought for you and risked his life to rescue you from the hand of Midian. So right there in these verses, you can see the trees represented a people of Israel, and those trees wanted a king to come and reign over them. Now, this particular king was elected by the people. This king was not elected by God, right? See, the actual first king over the Israelites elected by God would have been Saul, but the first king anointed over Israel was King David, right? But right here in Judges chapter 9, we can see that trees have something to do with a king of Israel, or the king reigning over other trees representing the people, right? But continuing on from there. Now, one of Abimelech's brothers was Jotham, and Jotham was the one who was hidden from Abimelech's wrath because he executed all 70 of his brothers, right? Just wiped them out of just pure greed, selfishness, and want for authority and rulership, right? But Jotham itself, his name means the Lord is perfect, or Jehovah is perfect, made Jehovah complete, right? And we know in the book of Jeremiah, the Lord is looking to fulfill his might and his will over his people, right? Because this is all about gathering the Lord's people back together in some way, shape, form, or fashion, even through Jesus Christ's birthday, right? Because even during Passover was the Israelites leaving to go towards the promised land, the land of milk and honey. Even on his birthday, crossing over the Jordan River into Jericho, right? All at the same time, right? So we got to realize that this first month of the year and this 10th day of the year has a true source of aspect of God's will and God's power. And it all has to do with gathering back his people into the land of promise, right? Even in times of war, even in times of calamity and chaos. Just like I showed y'all that paper I found on top of the hill, if you watched my last video, it was talking about the prophecy of Gaza becoming a ruinous heap, right? Just like Damascus. All of these things are being fulfilled out of the Bible in this particular period of time in history, right? Which we'll see the importance in that. But continuing on. So as this combination lock of time, as this combination lock of history, and this combination lock of Jesus Christ's birthday, being the pregnant year, if you will, during these leap years, 2024, February 10th actually falls on Adar, the first month of Adar, right? Being Adar 1, and it's also a leap year. So in this leap year, February 10th falls in the month of Adar. Now we know Adar, we know that Passover, and we know that Tu B'Shavat all have something in common. But let's go to Tu B'Shavat, since that's when we said Jesus Christ's birthday is. But we see that right now in this year that his birthday is falling in the beginning of Adar on the new moon, which is the new year of the Chinese New Year, right? Year of the dragon, if you will, right? But that's also Adar 1, right? The first day of Adar, right? Because there's revelations in those type of things. But as that combination lock of Jesus Christ's birthday comes to break down in the sequence, his birthday falls within these time scales more and more frequently. So if we look at February 10th, 2017, was actually Tu B'Shavat. But not only was it Tu B'Shavat, there was a lunar annular eclipse, right? A lunar eclipse on Tu B'Shavat of 2017, February 10th, speaking. Now, if you fast forward 4 years to 2020, right? February 10th of 2020 was actually a solar eclipse over the Middle East and the United Arab Emirates, right? Over there where it's, beautiful at, where, they got all that oil money going on and things like that. So you have Tu B'Shavat in 2017 and you have Tu B'Shavat in 2020, both landing on February 10th and also bringing a lunar and a solar eclipse during those very times. Now, what else and what other secrets within the month of Tu B'Shavat can we find anything to do with birthing? We already know that it's a birth year, right, or a birth month, a birthday month, right, considering leap years, right? And we know that 2024 is a leap year, right? Now, if you go to Tu, the word Tu in Tu B'Shavat is the letter T and U put together. But the word Tu actually represents the number 6 and 9. 6 and 9, when you put those together, are the number 15, right? Now, 15 is something that you can put in aspect and perspective of Passover, Purim, and also Tu B'Shavat. Purim is in the month of Adar, right? Which can be within January, February, and March. Continuing on from there. We know that Tu B'Shavat is within January and February, right? And Passover can be on a leap year beginning in the month of Adar or Nisan on a leap year, right? All of those things have an importance. Now, the thing that all of them have in common is that Purim is celebrated on the 15th day of Adar. Tu B'Shavat is celebrated on the 15th day of Shavat. And Passover actually begins and is celebrated on the 15th day, right, of Nisan. So when you put all those perspectives together, they begin to relate to each other, right? So now, if you remember, Shavat is the 5th month of the civil year starting in Tishri, and the 11th month of the ecclesiastical year on the Hebrew calendar starting in Nisan. Because Nisan is when Passover is, right? But we see that Shavat is also associated with Nisan through this matter. It is a month of 30 days. Shavat usually occurs in January or February on the Gregorian calendar because God can see through all of space and time, so there's no pulling no wool on God. There's no confusing him of when he gave his only begotten son, who is the Lord from on high, dwelling in the physical presence. There's no way he would be duped and not able to express when his son was born into this world, February 10th, and he was going to make sure that you knew it in a generation when he will recompense and bring back his judgment on this world. But continuing on. The name of the month was taken from the Akkadian language during Babylonian captivity, right? Because the Babylonian captivity is the reason these calendars got switched back to that which was not of Moses in the Exodus, right? So there you have it in the month of Shavat. But continuing on from there, because we want to continue to break these things down. We have a lunar and solar eclipse 4 years apart, right? February 10th, 2017, and then February 10th, 2020, right? And we know that some important, impactful things began to happen surrounding those times in these past some odd years, dating back that far, right? The world has been going through an extreme transformation, if you will. But we'll continue to break these things down. So we had a solar lunar eclipse, and we had a solar eclipse over the Middle East specifically, right, on February 10th of 2020. There was also an eclipse on June 21st of 2020, right? And we know that these eclipses all coincide with feast days and Hebrew and Jewish holidays, so on and so forth. But continuing on, we know that this year is a leap year. We know that on the Chinese New Year of this year is February 10th, right? The beginning of the lunar calendar. It's the year of the dragon. And then it's also the beginning of Adar 1, right? So even though Tu B'Shavat was on February 10th in 2017 and 20, Tu B'Shavat didn't fall on February 10th this year. It fell on Adar 1, right, in the month of Adar. That's how strategic these combination codes and blocks are when it comes to time and space and God communicating things to us. And then you also see that combination lock landing on February 10th and being a specific time of the month or an important time of the year, it's becoming more and more frequent in this particular generation because God is doing a work here. He's doing that strange work that he spoke about in the Bible, right? But continuing on. So when we think about the number 15 associated with Purim, associated with Passover, associated with Tu B'Shavat, right? Uh, two being 6 and 9. What do the 6 and 9 represent in Hebrew? Well, we know that the number 6 is the Vav, right? It represents a stake, right, or a stand. When we think about the number 9, the letter Tet in the Hebrew alphabet, this has a lot to do with the duality aspects of life, right? Speaking of good and evil, pure and impure, right? It also represents a snake basket, if you will. It represents something hidden within, right? And a lot of times, Tet is associated with pregnancy and giving birth, right? Because there's 9 months to the duration of pregnancy, right? And to delivering a child into the world. But go ahead and take a little view of these things, right? Because I'm going to go ahead and break down a clip here so that you can see the importance of breaking down Tu B'Shavat and it having been Christ's birthday, right? And we'll go on from there.
The letter Tet is shaped like a vessel that contains something good and hides it within. According to tradition, we can envision the Tet as a womb. Now this connects very beautifully with the number of the letter Tet, which is 9. 9 represents the 9 months of pregnancy, where the fetus is hidden within and is only revealed after receiving its goodness within. The first time that God says that a creation is good is by light. That God saw the light and it was good. And a number of times, additionally, in the story of creation, God relates the world as being good. The letter Tet begins the word Tov, which means goodness. And thus in Kabbalah, the Tet is expressed as the letter that hides goodness within it. Thus Kabbalah expresses the essence of the letter Tet as goodness is hidden within it. In the first verse of the Torah is encoded a name of God. In the first letters of Et HaShamayim, the Et HaOretz, the heavens and the earth. The first letters of those 4 words spell out a name of God that equals 17. So we see that goodness is hidden in creation from its very inception. The letter Tet, being the number 9, is once again the idea of birth, but not just physical birth, the idea of spiritual birth, of giving birth to potential, of actualizing potential. Thus we see a beautiful connection with the number 9 in blowing the shofar on Rosh Hashanah. One of the sounds of the shofar, the Truah, is made up of 9 staccato sounds. The Shvarim is made up of 3 shofar blasts, but they must be elongated for at least 3 beats, also equaling 9 beats. When looking in the holiday prayer book, the Machzor, you will see that the sets of blowing the shofar are constructed from series of 9s. Now this was deliberate because the sages wanted to allude to us that not only is God recreating the world, but that each person, as it were, is giving birth to themselves again. This is the power and the strength of rebirth and renewal that we're given at the beginning of the year to give birth to ourselves again, to connect to our inner potential. The letter Tet is a letter of birth and renewal, of bringing potential to actualization. And a very meaningful meditation would be to focus on all the goodness in the world, how much goodness is hidden all around us, how form is hidden in matter, how the soul is hidden in the body and how God is hidden in the world.
Build up, getting ready to strike. Now imagine a child on the inside of a mother's womb getting ready to be birthed. Welcome to the letter Tet, one of the paradoxical letters in the Hebrew alphabet. It's the 9th letter ordinally, and this happens to be the 9th part in our series on revealing the Hebrew letters. Let's get right into this letter that is the least used. It's the least common in all of the Torah, in all of the Word of God in the Old Testament. The Tet can represent two things, both good and evil. It's the dichotomy between good and evil. The Tet, which by the way makes the sound of T, T. In our English language, we would call it the letter T. But the Tet is a picture of two different things, both good and evil. It depends on how you look at it and how it is used. The Tet we find first in the Torah when God said, "Let there be light," and He saw the light and it was good. However, God did something here that was also of a paradox. He took what was good, the light, and He separated it from the darkness. So God separated light and darkness. And even in that, He saw that the separation was good. And so the letter Tet here, represented by the number 9, is a very interesting letter, but there's two pictures that we're seeing here. First of all, let's talk about the evil part of the Tet, or the evil aspect of that. It's a picture of a snake. One thing I don't like, this snake is coiled up as if ready to strike. On the other side, we have a picture of something good that is hidden on the inside of something else. And it's a picture of a mother's womb now that we see with a child, which would be the letter Yod, hidden on the inside of it. So you can almost see it like a basket. The womb is a basket or womb, something deep within the inside of it, hidden, that is good.
So as we continue on, I want to break down a specific timeline within the Bible that is given to us in the book of Daniel, but I want to specify on that in the book of Revelations, because in the book of Revelations, there is a birth giving place in Revelations chapter 12. There is a woman in the clouds in the heavens, right? She has 12 stars above her head. She's clothed with the sun, and the moon is at her feet. And she's about to give birth to a child who will rule over the nations, right? But there is also the dragon who is waiting for that child to be born so that he can devour that child. But when the child is caught up to heaven, the dragon is brought down to the earth. And I kind of see that in the aspects of the time that we're living in right now, being that it's Jesus Christ's birthday right among us today. So one thing I want to speak on is, if we go to February 10th of 2017 and February 10th of 2020, what happened in between that time space? Well, if we go to September 23rd, 2017, there's been many lessons spoken of that the sign of the woman of Revelation 12 could be seen in the heavens on September 23rd of 2017, which was also a February 10th Tu B'Shavat year, right? Birthday of the trees, if you will. New Year of the trees, if you will, right? So we're going to go ahead and follow up on that. We already showed you how the letter Tet, which is the number 9, and we know that the number 6 and 9 have a dual aspect because you can flip either one and get either number out of the two. And the Tet, actually before the Yiddish expression of the Hebrew language, was represented at times as the number 6. So the number Tet is the number 6 in some aspect, shape, form, or fashion also. But continuing on, let's go ahead and check out this September 27th prophecy, 23rd prophecy of 2017. And let's see how all of that relays into this timeline of the woman of Revelations 12, and if we can break down that Revelations 12 throughout history, because I guarantee you guys, we're going to see it for what it is. But go ahead and peep it out, and I'll be right back.
2017, the sun, moon, and stars will align to fulfill a 2,000-year-old prophecy. And there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. And she being with child cried, travailing in birth, and pain to be delivered. And she brought forth a man-child, who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron, and her child was caught up unto God and to his throne. Before you click off this video, I understand there's been many false predictions, false prophecies over the years. This is different. Bear with me and see. First, you need to understand that God made the sun, moon, and stars, and they all obey his order. By the word of the Lord were the heavens made, and all the host of them by the breath of his mouth. Canst thou bind the sweet influences of Pleiades, or loose the bands of Orion? Canst thou bring forth Mazzaroth in a season? So we see here that God himself says that he moved the constellations. They obey his ordained order. There's many more verses. Please pause the video to see them. They'll also be in the description. Okay, so we have the constellation Virgo clothed with the sun. And then, as you can see here, the moon is under her feet, and above her head is the 9 stars from the constellation Leo, plus the 3 planets that align perfectly. And to fulfill the birth prophecy, you have Jupiter that stays in the womb for 9 months. Absolute precision. Another thing you must realize is this is not astrology. This is the lost knowledge of biblical astronomy. Stick with me and you'll see. Let's start at the beginning and see what God said. And let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. Jesus himself said that when he returns there shall be signs in the sun and the moon and the stars. Think about this. If God wanted to speak to all his children across the entire earth and speak to them all at once in the same universal language, how would he do it? Look at Psalm 19. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth his handiwork. Day unto day uttereth speech, and night unto night showeth knowledge. There is no speech nor language where their voice is not heard. Their line is gone out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. When Jesus was born, it was marked in the stars. The 3 wise men saw his star in the east and knew of it. What makes you think his second coming would be any different? Isn't this sign just the retelling of Jesus' birth? And didn't he say no man knows the day or the hour? We look at Revelation 1:1, the revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave unto him to show unto his servants things which must shortly come to pass. Revelation 1:1 shows us that the Father showed all things to Jesus when he ascended to the throne, and he showed us in the book of Revelation. Jesus himself, when he spoke to the churches, said that his believers, his followers, if they overcome and hold his words to the end, they would rule with a rod of iron. This is a very specific passage that connects Revelation 12 and a prophecy of what's going to happen for his believers. Alright, so are we just cherry picking a couple verses and trying to put a prophecy behind it, or is this found anywhere else in the Bible? I'm glad you asked. Unfortunately, we will not be able to read all these verses. Please feel free to pause and take a look at each one of these coinciding verses, which are all pieces to this grand puzzle. Well, what does it all mean? No one knows exactly. What's very interesting is the language that is used in Revelation 12, where the child is caught up unto God. The word caught up is the Greek word harpazo. It's the same word used in Thessalonians when Paul describes the rapture. We are not saying this is what's going to happen, but it is certainly intriguing and worthy to be aware of. The main message is to know that this alignment has not happened in the last 2,000 years since its prophecy. While it's imperative to know that this ministry is not date setting, the facts are the facts. This alignment is set for September 23rd, 2017. Some have run the numbers, and the odds of this are in the trillions. And just 33 days before September 23rd, on August 21st, a total eclipse cuts the United States in half, which is extremely rare and we feel is very prophetic. So again, to quickly recap, you have a woman clothed with the sun, the moon under her feet, and a crown of 12 stars above her head, who just gave birth after a 9-month pregnancy.
So when expressing Jesus Christ's birthday, I've already broke down to you Passover. I've already broke down to you Tu B'Shabbat and the month of Adar, but I haven't spoke thoroughly upon the month of Adar and concerning Purim, right, the celebration in the Bible. But what is Purim, and how does it pertain to Jesus Christ's birthday? Well, in this current time in the future and present tense, we celebrate Jesus Christ's birthday on Christmas, and that's where we partake in having feast and giving presents and gifts to one another, right? And to us, that is what Christmas is in the expression of the action of Christmas in this time and day, right? But where can we find anything remotely close to Christmas in the Bible? Because even on Passover, though they're about to be free from Egypt, and that could be like one of the greatest gifts you can receive is your freedom. But where can we actually see any resemblance to Christmas in the Bible? Well, in order to figure that out, we have to go to the book of Esther. Now, Esther herself could be a figure of the woman of Revelations 12 because she is the queen, right? And she also becomes the salvation of her people due to her uncle Mordecai having arranged the plan. There was a plot against the Israelites during that time, and a man named Haman, who was one of the king's men, was actually plotting against the king, and Mordecai, being a person of high stature, overheard this circumstance and ended up alerting the king that there was a plot against him. Now, 10 of Haman's sons ended up being hung on a pole, right? And there goes that number 10, like the 10th day of Passover, right? You take the lamb into the house. So in the same manner, 10 of Haman's sons were actually hanged because of their plot against the king, right? To make an example out of them. But let's go to the book of Esther, chapter 9, and we're going to go ahead and see if we can get a little bit of an idea of Purim, and see if we can get an idea of Christmas there also, right? Besides all of the killing and the slaughtering, the only reason that happened is because of the defense of the Israelites, because there was a plot against their people. They had to defend themselves, but continuing on. On the 13th day of the 12th month of Adar, remember February is the first and the last month, right? And we showed you that in other clips and videos. If you didn't get to check that out, just click on the timeline. I guarantee you it's in one of those videos and you can get brought up to speed. I don't even think it matters which order you follow it in because it's all expressing the birthday of Jesus Christ in February 10th. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, Jesus Christ's birthday, February 10th, and you can just keep following it in that order. But continuing on. So on the 13th day of the 12th month of Adar, there goes Adar, the edict commanded by the king was to be carried out. On this day, the enemies of the Jews had hoped to overpower them. But now the tables were turned and the Jews got the upper hand over those who hated them. The Jews assembled in their cities and all the provinces of King Xerxes to attack those determined to destroy them. No one could stand against them, because the people of all the other nationalities were afraid of the Jews. And all of the nobles of the provinces and the satraps and the governors and the kings and administrators helped the Jews. Because the fear of Mordecai had seized them, Mordecai was prominent in the palace. His reputation spread throughout the provinces. He became more and more powerful. The Jews struck down all of their enemies with the sword, killing and destroying them. And they did what they pleased to those who hated them. In the citadel of Susa, the Jews killed and destroyed 500 men. They also killed Parashat-Datha, Dalphon, and the 10 sons of Haman, the enemy of the Jews. But they did not lay their hands on the plunder. The number of those killed in the citadel of Susa was reported to the king the same day. And the king said to the queen Esther, The Jews have killed and destroyed 500 men, and the 10 sons of Haman in the citadel of Susa. What have they done to the rest of the king's provinces? Now what is your petition? It will be given to you. So the king, he's ready to give her whatever she commands, right? She has authority, right? And she is of the flock of Israel, right? And her uncle Mordecai set her up that way to be the queen, made sure she was beautiful enough, that she was having the right diets, the right perfumes, the right fragrances. He made sure that she was perfect for the king, and the king sought her in that way. But he's here willing to give her whatever she demands, even though they already carried out attacks on the people who were seeking to attack them, right? The tables were turned, if you will. Remember, it's funny how the tables turn. But continuing on. What is your request, and it will be granted to you? If it pleases the king, Esther answered, give the Jews in Susa permission to carry out this day's edict tomorrow also, and let Haman's 10 sons be impaled on poles, right? Just like Christ was hung, right? The lamb on the 10th day taken in, kept for 4 days, right? And on the 14th day he was given up. So the king commanded that this be done, and the edict was issued in Susa. And they impaled the 10 sons of Haman. The Jews in Susa came together on the 14th day of the month, Adar, and they put to death in Susa 300 men. But they did not lay their hands on the plunder. They didn't take none of the spoils or the riches of their doings, right? They just wanted to seek out vengeance upon those who were trying to seek out to harm them. And meanwhile, the remainder of the Jews who were in the king's provinces also assembled to protect themselves and get relief from their enemies. They killed 75,000 of them, but did not lay a hand on their plunder. This happened on the 13th day of the month of Adar, and on the 14th day they rested and made it a day of feasting and joy. The Jews in Susa, however, had assembled on the 13th and 14th, and then on the 15th day they rested and made it a day of feasting and joy. That is why the rural Jews, those living in villages, observe the 14th of the month of Adar as a day of joy and feasting and a day for giving presents to each other, right? So there you go. Feasting and joy and giving presents to one another because they're celebrating their victory over the enemies, right? Their victory over those who plotted against them while they were living already in captivity. They were just trying to peaceably make it through that time, right? But Queen Esther had to get married to the king of Persia, which is Iran in today's world. And we know that Iran in today's world will be part of the tools that God used to bring about his judgment upon things, right? Iran will attack Israel, and Israel in return will begin to bring down fire and brimstone upon those who gather around and surround Israel to bring Israel to its knees. But continuing on. So now that we broke that little bitty spiel down, Esther, right, the queen of heaven, if you will, because Esther also means Ishtar, which also means Easter. So we know that this story has everything to do with Jesus Christ being crucified and resurrected in some shape, form, or fashion, being born again, right, being brought back into the life of things, if you will. But if we continue on from there, we know that Purim now is in the month of Adar, is on the 15th day. We know that Passover begins on the 15th day of Nisan, and we know that Tu B'Shavat begins on the 15th day. We know that the word Tu is the number 9 and 6, which makes 15. We know that 9 represents a pregnant woman, a serpent, right, a snake basket, if you will. And if you look at the Paleo Hebrew, it has an X within that basket. The X is the Roman numeral number 10. So we can see the 10 aspect of things right there in the snake basket. We know that what she's carrying within herself is what represents man, by the number 6 being the Vav. The Vav represents man. You know how Adam was created on the 6th day, if you will. But continuing on from there, since we broke that down, we want to kind of go through February 10th in a sequence to this woman of Revelations 12, right? Because there's a dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns. This dragon seeks to destroy her. This dragon seeks to go after all of her children, not just the one that was caught up to God, but the dragon seeks to go after the rest of her children also. So what is this 7 head and 10 horns? Well, if we just break it down in layman's terms, it is a religious and political system, right? The religious part of the system is the 7 heads. The political aspect of this system is the 10 horns, right? And we know that one of the horns was plucked up, and up came three of the horns were plucked up out of the 10, and a little horn came up out of those 3 horns that were plucked up. Now, in some reverence, we're going to go ahead and break these things down. The book of Revelations have been happening since Jesus' crucifixion. So we have to kind of go back to the time Christ was crucified and bring you into the current. Now, through revelations that have been given to me back in 2015, I began to understand the life of Jesus Christ, Yeshua, Yahweh Shai, whatever name you call him by, because see, in today's world, people have begun to question the true name of Jesus Christ. So even if you still call him by Jesus Christ, you still have a subconscious thought of Yahweh. You still have a conscious thought of Yeshua. You still have a conscious thought of Joshua or Jesus Christ. So anytime you speak that name, there's still a subconscious thought of his true name. And we should not be gang-banging on things that can be simply understood. It's time not to just simply believe things. It's time to start knowing things. This is the age of Aquarius. So it's time to wake up from your slumber. It's time to wake up from your sleep. It's time to put aside all of those fleshly things that people continue to hold against each other and hold over people's head like a piece of cheese to a rat, like a carrot to a horse. There's no more of that going on in this world. And And even though people will continue to act wickedly as the Bible says, those who have wisdom will wake up to that wisdom and begin to act and utilize those things instead of being held and drawn back by trivial things of this world, if you will. But continuing on, we're going to go ahead and break down these revelations from the time of Jesus Christ. So in 2015, I began to calculate and understand. Jesus came into his ministry at 31 years old, or he came into his ministry just before 32 AD, not 31 years old. He was actually older than what y'all think. But continuing on, 32 AD is when he started this ministry. Fast forward to the time that I was given the revelations in 2015, would have been exactly 1983 years from the time period. Jesus Christ was crucified in 36 AD. Now, Pontius Pilate, who was the one over him and Barabbas deciding which one would be let go and which one would be crucified, and him washing his hands, saying that he didn't want to have nothing to do with it. So it was up to the Jews, his own people, that decided they want to crucify Jesus Christ anyway, right? So that time period was 36 AD. Now, how can we get some reverence or semblance to that? All you got to do is look at the time Pontius Pilate was in rulership, from between 27 AD to between 36 and 37 AD. So within that time frame, we know that his coins were being minted back during that time, and you can actually see the dates on the coins. But that's another story and another time, and you can do the homework yourself. You don't have to take nothing I say for what it is. Just take what I say as a seed planted, and you can do your own work. Make sure you're doing your homework out there, right? But continuing on. So if we go from 36 AD, we have to read Revelations 12, right? And we have to check out this timeline of what the Bible says at times, time, and half a time, which is symbolic of 3.5 times, right? Let's see if we can break that 3.5 times down. That can be 3.5, that can be 35, that could be 350, that could be 3,500, right? So on and so forth. 3.5 times, right? But we're going to break that 3.5 times down in a way that we can see it throughout history. Now that we know Jesus Christ's birth date, let's see if his birth date has any real resource, if there's any real semblance of his power and authority and God's will in that, right? But check me out, and we're going to go ahead and break that down. So the woman of Revelations 12, she can be symbolically represented as God's temple, right? She can be represented as the church, if you will, the bride, if you will, right? God's wife, right? The wife of the Lord, right? Now, if we go to Revelations chapter 12 and break down verse 14, it says, and the woman was given the wings of an eagle, right? 2 wings of an eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness, into her place, where she is nourished for a times and half a time, from the face of a serpent, right? Of the dragon, if you will. So God took her out of sight from the dragon. She gave birth to the child. The child was caught up to heaven, and her herself, she was taken out into the wilderness where she would be fed and cared for a times and half a time. Now, when we think about that being the church, we got to go back from the time of Christ's crucifixion, right? And then we fast forwarded from there. So I began to notice some things. If we go from 36 AD and we fast forward to the Roman Empire and them trying to get their hands on Christianity. See, Christianity was allowed to grow and develop in a sense without being tainted by some other authority or rulership wanting to claim and have some precedence over it because they see it was a bag, because they saw that there was some power and authority in that they could control the people with, right? So remember, what was given to you, what belongs to you will be taken from you and given to another producing its fruit. I spoke on that in another video, but that's the truth. Jesus Christ saw that those things would take place, that those things would actually happen. But if we go back to the time of Constantine, Constantine is the Roman emperor who would bring about Christianity into the Roman world and the Roman Empire, right? Where Jesus Christ will become a thing, if you will. He will become the new fad, right? He will become the continuation of Greek in Roman mythology, and he would be put in that order of religion and godship, right? But continuing on from that, so Constantine fought in the name of Jesus Christ at one point in time during his authority and rulership.
Follow in my footsteps, I see